Good evening. And I don't have anything in order. I just jotted some things down, and we'll start off by saying that this was the 12th year that we had a group from our church to go to Wyoming and work for a week at Mountaintop Baptist Assembly. That's the Wyoming camp. Here in North Carolina, we have like 4 different camps across the state, and they have one camp for the whole state of Wyoming. And people have asked me, well, why Wyoming? Well, back in about 2005, Wyoming stepped up and said, we need help. And they contacted the North Carolina Baptist men and asked them, was there any way they could get anybody to come help them? And the reason they were asking for help was because in Wyoming, there's like 95, 96 Southern Baptist churches in the whole state of Wyoming. And Wyoming is a state that's quite a bit larger than North Carolina. And in District 8 of North Carolina, that includes 8 different counties here, there's like 103 Southern Baptist churches. So you can see that they are at a disadvantage out there when it comes to having the support that they need in order to keep their camp going. Each year, along about the end of May, which I usually start right after Christmas, start making announcements and start asking people, are you interested in going? But in May, usually the camp director out there, Ms. Linda Rourke, she will call and say, can you help us? So we go out and do just whatever needs to be done. I've had people ask me, why do you drive? And why don't you fly out? You'd be a whole lot more rested when you get there if you'd fly. Well, here's the deal. They have a tool shed out there, but they don't have all the tools that we might need. So that's the reason we drive and take our tools with us, so we'll have the tools that we need for the job that we're going to do. This year, our project was to put down floor covering in a house. This house, the camp there at Mountaintop Baptist Assembly is on top of Casper Mountain. And there was a house that joined the camp's property, and it was an elderly couple that lived there. When the man passed away, his wife, which they had already discussed this before he passed away, they donated their house and 6 acres to the camp. So this house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home, a double-wide mobile home, and the floor covering in it was pretty well shot. So when we got there, the floor covering was already taken up. The old carpet and everything was already taken up. And what we did was put this linoleum floor covering back down. I call it linoleum. They say it was a free-floating floor. And I said, well, okay, maybe it is, but that looks like rolls of linoleum to me. And I had never done this before, and with the help of Jeff Peeler, who had done a little of this type of floor covering, we were able to we didn't quite get finished with the work. You see, here's the deal about missions. A lot of times you don't get finished. You go and you work as hard as you can and you do everything that you can, but there's still a lot of times that you don't get finished with the work, and it's left for somebody else to finish up. The floor covering is completed now. Another part of the project was going to be replumbing this house because it already had some plumbing problems with it. Well, thank the Lord, by the time we got there, some other team had already come in and they had already completely replumbed the whole house. This year, our week to work this year was June 17th to 21st. And 6 of us drove out and Jeff Peeler flew out. met us out. He actually beat us to the camp. And each morning, the temperature was somewhere around mid-30s. But it warmed up during the day to about 70 degrees. So we started off every morning with a layer of clothes on, like a t-shirt, flannel shirt, jacket. But then by lunchtime, we were usually down to our t-shirts. Never did put my shorts on. It didn't get that warm. That 70 degrees is still cool. I want to say thank you to the church. Thank you to Pastor Marcus for giving me this opportunity to share a little bit about Wyoming and what's going on out there. But I want to thank you as a church for your support. Your prayers are felt. Don't ever get the idea, well, it's a waste of time, they're way off out there or whatever. They'll never know whether I prayed for them or not, but prayers are felt. And that was one prayer of mine was, Lord, I don't know anything about putting this floor covering down. I need help. And with your prayers, we were able to do quite a bit of the work. If you bought a bowl of soup and a salad when we did a fundraiser back in April, thank you. If your Sunday school class gave to support us, thank you. If you gave as an individual, thank you. The money we had, when we left here, we had $1,800, which is the most we've ever had when going out there. So we bought food for the week. Actually went out to eat a couple of times. And then the money that was left over, I don't know how much we had left over. We bought blinds for the house. We bought some supplies to help us put this floor covering down. And all the money that was left over was given to the camp. And it's very much appreciated. It helps them to fix things when they arise. Like one year, their oven went out and they needed to replace that, and they've done other things with it. In this project that we had, that's Miss Nancy Licardo there, and she's right in her comfort zone right there. That lady can cook. Now, I want you to know she can cook. If you hadn't ever eaten any of Miss Nancy's food, you missed out. I don't know whether I ought to tell this or not. We joined in with another team from Georgia, and I think she showed those ladies up. I ain't lying to you. She's a wonderful cook. She makes sure that we don't go around hungry. In this project, we had to move furniture. The floor covering was gone, but putting floor covering down in a house where somebody has lived, you've got to move everything out, and put the floor covering down, then put everything back in. So it took as much time to move furniture as it did to put the floor covering down. And every day, I think each one of us felt a different muscle that we hadn't felt before, and or at least hadn't felt in a long time. On the way out there, Linda had, or before we left here, Linda, my wife, had got in touch with Beth Williams. Beth was a camp director for 10 years out there, and excuse me, she and her husband, Pastor Quinn Williams, he was pastor at Boyd Avenue Baptist Church there in Casper, Wyoming. And they said that they were at the national convention. And so Linda said, well, our pastor's down there. And she wanted to know what his name was. And so Linda told him that Pastor Marcus was with the North American Mission Board, And so they went and met Pastor Marcus, and then she called us back and said that she thought we had a wonderful pastor. And Linda told her she didn't have to tell us that. We already knew. These pictures that you're seeing there, Kathy, if we can back up a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about pictures. When we left here, Interstate 29 north out of Kansas City, Missouri was flooded. So we knew that we didn't want to get tangled up in all that and having to take big detours and all this kind of stuff. So what we did instead, we went straight across the United States on Highway 70 out through Kansas. And when you're traveling along in Kansas, going west, it's like you're in a low spot, or to me, it's like you're in a low spot. And then you cross over into Colorado, and just before you get into Denver, you come up over a hill, and this is the first thing that we saw when we came up over the hill there in Colorado, just outside of Denver. So there's quite a bit of snow still on the Rocky Mountains there. So let's go on now and see what other pictures we've got. That's just another shot of what we saw. This is where we crossed into Wyoming. That's always a welcome sight after you have ridden for 2 days. And this was in May, last week of May, when Linda Rourke, the camp director, first tried to get into the camp. Now, the camp is 8,000 feet in elevation on top of Casper Mountain. So it can snow up there at any time. And this was their first attempt to get into the camp. They had to use this, I don't know whether it's a loader or whatever it is there. I'm sure she had to rent some, had to pay somebody to do this. So there you go. And this is just outside. Those of you that's been there would recognize where this is at. This is just outside of the dining hall. That's supposed to be a little driveway that goes around the dining hall. But you can see it was still covered with snow when they first got up there. And this, when you're going up to Casper Mountain, up to the camp, it's a dirt road that goes into the camp. And it's worse than any dirt road that we ever had here when I was a kid. There's places in there that when we have gone through those mud puddles, we wonder, is there a bottom in it? And are we going to be able to get the bus out? So it was very muddy this year because it had so much snow. And but when you get there, that's always exciting there to see that sign. That's where you turn in to go to the camp. This is sunrise over the camp on Monday morning. This is Linda Rourke. Not much of a picture there. She's talking on the phone. And anybody that knows Linda, this is how she spends a lot of her time. People's always got questions. The other teams that's coming to work. See, in North Carolina, there's somebody from another state every week to cook for the children or youth that's there in the camp. So what she's doing, she's on the phone either ordering up food for the next week or talking to somebody who has a question about what they're going to be doing when they get to the camp. This is a chapel, which several years ago we helped to build that. And then sunrise over the chapel. This is a dining hall. That chimney there, those that have been out there for the last few years know that the chimney was pulling away from the building. And it had got to the point where they were afraid that somebody was going to park a car there or something, and it was either going to fall on a car or fall on somebody. So the team from Georgia tore that chimney down, and when we left out there, they had it framed up, and they were going to pour concrete for a new chimney. This is we stayed in Yeager Hall, and this is just outside the door there in Yeager Hall. That's our dormitory. That's inside Yeager Hall. All the comforts of home, right? And we always have visitors in the camp. These are mule deer does that wandered into the camp eating the grass. And then these two guys showed up one day when we went up to work at the house, and I made a little noise and got them to stop and turn around so we could get a picture of them. And from what I've been told, Buster, that's not the big one. This is inside one of the closets. Every closet in that house had something in it, and it was not organized at all. It was packed in there, and there was times it felt like you had to take a crowbar to unwedge it from its spot so you could move it out to put the floor covering down. We purchased blinds for the house. With the money that you gave us, we purchased new blinds for the house, and Jeff's installing one of the blinds there. And that's our big project laying there in the floor. Since it was a double wide, you had to fill in the crack there in the center of the house, had to sand that down. I can't tell you how many times we vacuumed. See, Sid's not actually vacuuming. He's actually got the hose hooked into the vacuum cleaner on the other side to blow the dust and everything away from me so I can see what I'm doing. There was so much dust flying. And then we put fans in the windows to help pull the dust on outside. In the meantime, now here it is. It's in maybe the high 30s or the 40s to now at this time, and it was rather chilly. And then you had to put all these beds back in there. Those shots there are before shots, before we put the floor covering down. I think they can sleep about a dozen people in that house. This is a new futon, and that was another small project that we had, was put futons together. And I think they found out that there's a right way and a wrong way that thing goes together. So after they thought they were through building the frame on one, they said, whoop, it's backwards. This is not going to work. They had to tear it apart and build it back the other way. And not Nancy, but Angie was actually washing clothes in that picture there before this one. It always seems like, regardless of how many clothes you take with you, there's always something that needs to be washed. And the ladies that was with us, they also wash dishes there in the house so that whoever comes in now will have clean dishes in the cabinets. And that's at a rest area somewhere. I can't remember where it was at. Pulling out, we're fixing to come home. And this picture here is at an overlook on Casper Mountain. It's always humbling, and that sunrise there at that overlook. It's always humbling to me to stand at that overlook and look and see. You know, around here we got so many trees and everything, but out there at that elevation where you can really see, Casper Town is like it's in a bowl. There's a ridge of mountains all the way around it, and it sits down in the middle of it. And to be able to see the distances that you can see from on top of that mountain, sunrise comes about an hour earlier than it does here because of the elevation that you're on. Although it may say, like our sunrise may be at 7:30, well, it would be 6:30 out there because of the elevation there on top of the mountain. And we're leaving. Before we left, we found out that Interstate 29, which is a shorter route than going all the way across on Interstate 70, Interstate 29, one lane was open. The floodwaters had receded enough that one lane was open, and we were able to come back down Interstate 29. And these pictures here, that looks like a big lake, but that's floodwaters. I can't imagine. That's farmland. Every year when we go through there, it's corn higher than your head or soybeans as far as you can see. One of those pictures has got debris on top of a building. I can't remember which picture it was. But that's how deep the water was. And we, at one point, we were 5 miles from the river. And the water was still that deep. See, that's the fence along the interstate there. And it was up over it because there's all kind of debris hanging in that fence. The grain bins were breaking open from the pressure from the grain inside and then the water pressing against it on the outside. Some of the grain bins were breaking open and corn was spilling out of them. And I never felt so sorry for somebody. If that water, I don't know that it's all dried up yet, but there ain't no way they can farm out this year. So those guys, those farmers, they're going to be out of income. And since it was coming up on the 4th of July, we thought that nothing would be better than to have a picture of the flag over the bus. So that's in Nebraska. Okay, I think, is that all the pictures there? I think it is. Okay. All right. I never felt so sorry for anybody than I did that team from Georgia. They split up into two groups. They had a small group working on that chimney, and then they had a larger group that was replacing some water lines. They had a diagram of the property. And they the camp had rented a track hoe, and a guy was operating that track hoe, and he hit a water line before they were ready to break or to hook onto the new line. So we were without running water for a day. And after they got that fixed, they decided that they better turn off the power to the water pump at the well, at the spring. And about 5 minutes after they cut the power off, he cut the power line running through the ground. So, they had one problem after another. They didn't come to the dining hall. They were wet from their waist down, from standing in that ditch that they were digging to put this new pipe in and everything. And it seemed like every time they got one problem fixed, there was another one. I want to ask y'all to please remember Mountaintop Baptist Assembly Camp in your prayers. If Satan was ever trying to shut anything down, it's that camp. Linda Rourke told us that she had a visitor late last year, and she said he was a director of another guy. There's 4 camps on that mountain at different places. She had a visitor from one of the other camps, and he was talking to her about, how do you do things here? What about this? What about that? And she said he was smiling all the time. He'd ask a question, I'd answer him, and we'd talk a little bit, then he'd ask another question and everything. Well, the health department found out that she wasn't doing the necessary, or what they feel is necessary, inspections on their water supply. They want her to do an inspection once a month. She said, we're not open but 3 months because of snow. But they want an inspection each month. And there's 2 other groups, and I can't remember who else it is that's like the health department went and told somebody else, and then they told somebody else. And each one of these, they don't talk to one another, but each one of them is causing their own problems for the camp and wanting to get different things redone. And the dry fill for the septic system is not as big as it's supposed to be, and or so they say. They haven't had any problems out of it any time that we've ever been out there. So just remember this camp, and remember Linda Rourke. She told me, she said, I can handle stress, but she said, this is about to get me. She said, I'm pulled in so many different directions. So if you would, please remember Linda Rourke and the camp in your prayers. Are we going next year? Now, it's too early to tell. But if anybody's interested, start praying now. That's what I'm doing. Lord, is this where we need to be again next year? There's always work to be done out there, and it's always a joy to see when you leave and you look back, or in your mind you look back and that where you were at when you were there, when you first got there, and then to see all the work that was accomplished while you're there, and to know that you've left it in better condition than what it was when you got there. It's always rewarding. So if anybody's interested in going next year, just start praying now, and sometime after the first of the year, then Lord willing, we'll start trying to put another team together, and we'll try it again. For those of you who had planned to go this year and wanted to go this year, don't feel bad. It just wasn't your time to go. The Lord always sends the right ones at the right time. And don't want to be out of wheel of what God has for us to do. Okay, is there any? Well, while the camp's open, they want samples each month that the camp's open. That's what it is. Yeah, no, you can't get in there because of the snow up there. For those of you who don't know this or haven't heard me say this before, I don't have any pictures of the cabins up close, but to give you an idea how deep snow gets up there, they had to replace the roof on one of the cabins one year where a snowmobile run over it. So that's how deep snow is. Any other questions? Okay.
Who stays in the double wide during the camp season?
The cooks stay in the double wide. That's where the cook teams that come in each week, they're the ones that stays in that double wide. Yes, Melanie, I saw your hand. Okay, all right. We have stayed in the double wide before, depending on how big another group was that we might be going to be work with for a week. So it's not a bad place to stay. You got everything that you need there. You got a kitchen and 2 bathrooms and a bed. So hey, there's no TV. No TV. Cell phones work pretty good on top of the mountain. That's just because there's a cell phone tower just about a mile from where the camp is at. Because there are places out there in the wide open spaces of Wyoming and Nebraska, there's still places where cell phones don't work. Okay, anything else? Again, thank you for your support. Thank you for allowing us to go and to help out at camp. Okay, thank you.